high-mindedness or disinterest, one would pattern all of society to their own liking. Here they would use those universities anyway, John Rawls' theory of justice and his pattern theory of justice. They would object to that. So the libertarian argument is that no end-state principle of justice can be continuously realized without continuous interference with other people's lives. So confident, I think, that using the word interference is sufficiently morally repugnant to carry the argument. Well, political liberalism, on the other hand, as an alternative to libertarianism, doesn't posit a given, once-for-all bundle of goods and services that must be distributed. Rather, it applies to ongoing practices in which unequal effort, talents, and other qualities are in fact already and legitimately rewarded unequally. This only requires that any inequality surplus be redistributed so as to maximize the expectations of the least advantaged. Well, this takes fully into account how goods and services are produced and how the people who produce them would respond to changes in their rewards for that production. Okay, the last thing I want to say is I think hardcore libertarians following Hayek, and actually Robert Nozick as well, are mostly straightforward about the inability of the market to distribute fair outcomes. Well, that's what markets are for, fair enough. Yet if the intellectual right is really committed to this form of libertarianism, the type that argues market outcomes may be unjust, but do in fact maximize negative liberty, then political liberalism has a simple task. Just point out the injustices, then allow voters to choose between justice and negative liberty. So just finally, to translate some of this into political terms, in contrast to the libertarian message that government has impeded the progress of the African American, political liberalism looks to stress how government, in conjunction with individual initiatives and businesses, can help boost opportunities for all.
Dr. White.
I think I can do this. You can hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, well, actually the seating situation here is good. From your perspective, it's vice versa, but I'm to the right of Ken and to the left of Walter politically. Sort of here in the middle of the road. So I fully expect to come in a distant third if this is a debate tonight. And because I'm a political moderate, and the fact is that political moderation doesn't inspire a lot of emotion. People don't want to sew on armbands and wave banners and march on something in order to make their point. But that is what I believe, and so I feel I need to be candid with you and tell you what I really think. I also want to just say how much I enjoyed this exchange of ideas. It seems to me, and I believe for a long time now, that the university is quintessentially about the exchange of ideas. And it may do many other wonderful things besides exchange ideas. But if it isn't doing that, then it's failing in I think, in its central mission. So I'm just very happy to participate in things like this, and also come and not participate and just observe and benefit from the exchange of ideas. So I also want to say just a few words about Dr. Block and Dr. Keulman. I've known both of them for many, many years. I've actually taken a trip with Dr. Keulman. We went to a conference together and shared a ride together. He's got a great sense of humor and a great wit. He's also a very gentle and caring man, and I respect his politics. I've known Walter for years. We've become friends. We mix it up vociferously. He also has a great sense of humor. He's also a very, very gentle and caring man. I have to know that he's a great dad and a great husband. He goes to the hospital to visit the sick. He does all these sorts of things. So I don't think I'm not sitting between two evil men here. I'm sitting between two very good men. I have differences with both of them, but the subject tonight is libertarianism, so I just want to sort of focus on that and limit myself to that. I'm not here to prove my erudition. I have, however, over the years tried to do some reading within the libertarian canon. I understand that there's no libertarian pope, so there's not some sort of received doctrine of libertarianism. There are different threads of libertarianism. I've read not all, but a considerable amount of Ayn Rand. I read actually Human Action, as an independent studies with one of the top students here at the School of Business, Maria Bernicia, and we get together every Saturday morning and just argue about it. So, and I respect Mises as a thinker. I don't agree with him, but I'm familiar with him. There's a great footnote in the middle of the book on Nietzsche that I would recommend people who admire Mises to read, because it seems to be the central exception to his doctrine of ends and means, but I just mentioned that in passing. Also read a considerable amount of Nathaniel Branden, who I think Walter knows. He also knew Ayn Rand and his doctrine of logical objectivism. But I know that's not necessarily the philosophy that Walter uses, but it's just something that I wanted to acquaint myself with. I've actually used Friedrich Hayek's works on free trade in some of the courses that I've taught on political economy. I've not only used libertarian works, I've also used liberal works and conservative works and radical works as well, just to promote an exchange of ideas. So I just want to take a few moments to talk about what I like about libertarianism. Oftentimes when Walter and I debate, he says, you realize you're arguing in the negative and not in the affirmative? I said, yes, I understand that, Walter. So you should relax. There's plenty of criticism coming here in just a few minutes. But the things that I like about libertarianism is, number one, liberty. I'm actually very fond of liberty, and I would refer you to, and once again, I've learned the hard way. Do not read quotes to a group like this, no matter how erudite and inspirational you think they are. Just look people in the eye and tell them what you think it is. So I'll give you some references, which if you'd like to look them up, it makes for good reading. It's Book 11 of Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws. And he defines liberty essentially as the right to do anything you want within the framework of the law, which is an interesting definition. And of course, Montesquieu is assuming that the laws themselves are reasonable. But he understands liberty as something that is limited. Now, in fairness to libertarians, I don't know any libertarians who are in favor of abolishing all the laws. They have these notions of private courts and things like this, which I think is interesting and certainly worthy of consideration. But the whole idea is that liberty involves limits as well as capacities and abilities. I also share libertarianism's distrust of government, not as much as libertarians. I would refer you to James Madison's Federalist number 52, which I think sums it up rather well. He says, it's a comment on human nature that we would need government to begin with, number one. Number two, the first task is to form a government. The second task is trying to figure out ways to have that government control itself. And that is an enduring problem of politics, and I don't think anybody's got a perfect answer to that. But it means that while we need government, we should always approach government, no matter how well-intended its policies are, with a healthy level of distrust. And I accept that. I also actually very much like libertarianism to the extent that I'm generalizing here, emphasis on freedom of choice. And I would refer you to chapter 3 of John Stuart Mill's book on liberty, where he makes, I think, a very important point. Even if you know that a friend of yours is making bad choices, sometimes it's just very important to go ahead and let them make the bad choice. Because even if just hypothetically you're making the best choices, if you continue to override their decisions and make choices for them, at some point you break their spirit. And I think that's it's an important insight into human nature. So I'm in favor of choice up to a point. All right, there's all the good stuff. Enough of that. Now let's get down to my criticisms here. I just shot my bolt. All right, so that's it. All right, let's talk about the difference between liberalism and libertarianism. And I consider myself a moderate liberal, and the difference between a moderate liberal and a moderate conservative is hard to determine. I have no idea who I'm going to vote for in the presidential election. I've learned to wait until a couple of weeks before the election to make up my mind and just let the election take its course. I'm not going to advocate specific policies here tonight. I'm more interested in basic ideas here, and then we can talk about how that would work in terms of the realm of public policy. One of the main differences between liberalism and libertarianism is the issue of the duty to assist. Liberals, and John Rawls makes this very clear in his book on the law of peoples, liberals have a duty to assist. So I would like to say I absolutely accept the notion of the non-aggression principle. Don't hit. Don't grab from other people. Don't steal their stuff. I think this is an important lesson. We should have learned this by about the age of 4 or 5. So it's far more advanced ethically than toilet training, which is one of the first ethical lessons that we learn. And this is an important step in people's ethical development, but I don't think it is sufficient. Hopefully we have learned this. If we haven't learned this, we need to go back and take some sort of remediation course in ethical behavior. But I don't think it's enough, and I'll tell you why. And this is something for debate. Society is essentially a system of cooperation. Now, I think we can enshrine, and I think Rawls enshrines, this first principle is not the difference principle, it's the liberty principle. That people, in order to participate, his basic insight, which I think is rock solid, is if society is a system of cooperation, people are only going to cooperate if there's some benefit for them to cooperate. Notice, though, it is a series of cooperation. The idea that people do much better in some sort of cooperative society than they do simply out on their own. And I do this in class. Even people who go out and live on a desert island who can do very well for themselves can do this because of all the lessons they learned in some sort of social arrangement. And I think that needs to be recognized. The other two criticisms that I have, which are mainly theoretical, is this notion of spontaneous order. Now, clearly there is a spontaneous order in the world in which we live. It isn't necessarily amenable to human welfare, however. And so, cancer is a form of spontaneous order, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's amenable to us. And the thing that amazes me about libertarianism, and I think one of their chief flaws, is they engage in a form of wishful thinking, which is that the market itself constitutes a form of spontaneous order, and if everybody pursues, free from coercion, what they perceive to be their own best interest, that everything works out, not perfectly, they don't make this argument, it works out as well as it possibly can. And my response to that is if you believe that, and many of the libertarians I know, and I don't want to label people, consider themselves rational, consider themselves atheists, but if you believe in that, you might as well just go ahead and accept the incarnation of Christ, the revelation of Moses on Mount Sinai, or any other religious principle. It strikes me as a faith-based principle that involves a lot of wishful thinking. And I think that's and it leads to a sort of self-delusion, or sort of living in a political fantasy world. Finally, and I mean no disrespect, poor Walter, and I didn't mean to insult him a while back when we were debating on the legalization of dope, took exception to this. I want to emphasize, Walter is well-intended, he has people's best interest at heart. Even when he says provocative things, I think Walter says that because he genuinely believes that he's got a libertarian gospel here. And if he can only communicate that to people and they can exercise their power of reason and critical reflection, then it will be good for them. So I think his intention is good. But I think we need to distinguish between the message that one intends and the message that is heard. And the message that is heard here is one of narcissism. It is one of self-indulgence. It is one of, I can pretty much do anything I want, and if I mess up my life, that's my business, and I can just do it. That is a very attractive message. And it's deceptive, and I don't think Walter intends to deceive, but I don't think he's making a distinction between his wishful thinking construct here about how the way things work and the way things actually work. Finally, and this is another reason why I expect to place a distant third, I do, and I'm not a postmodern, I believe there is such a thing as human nature. I think it's complicated and mysterious, but I don't think we can underestimate the capacity in human nature for evil. Henry Gibbon defines history as a register of the crimes and follies of humankind. Now, the Austrian school, oh, that's me telling me to shut up. I'll look at this in a second. The Austrian school doesn't pay much attention to history, and I understand why they don't pay much attention to history. Because if you pay attention to history and you want to argue for or against the capacity for human evil, if you look at history, I think I've got this argument one hands down. That's it.
So the format the rest of the way, we have 7 questions that were developed by the organization, by the students. We'll try to spend between 5 and 10 minutes on each question.
Chris, can you comment on the other guy's statements, or do we just leave it that way?
I'd suggest just leave it that way, but if you want to comment, I think there's ample room throughout the questions to comment. I'm going to ask, for each question, I'll ask one panelist to be the first to answer, and I've alternated those. So, and the first question, I think, is kind of a historical question. I'm going to make this maybe the shortest question that we deal with. I'm going to assert my right as moderator to do that, and that'll leave us more time for the others. So the first question, and Professor Block, I'd like you to be the lead on this,
I
if you
always
don't
have
mind.
to go first.
No, you don't. After this, you're not going.
Get those guys.
So the question is, what approaches are prominent in libertarianism, and how have those approaches changed and developed over time? What explains the diversity of approaches within libertarianism? Maybe 2 minutes to respond.
One joke about libertarians, if you get 10 libertarians in a room and you ask a question, you get 11 different answers. Libertarians are, sort of like herding cats. It's hard to get everyone on the same page. That maybe explains the diversity of libertarianism. And the approach that's prominent in libertarianism is the non-aggression principle. Keep your mitts off of other people. And since I've got more than, I've got a little bit more time, since I've got 2 minutes, I wanted to comment very briefly on some things that were said before. Ken said liberty is the sole value. That's not my libertarianism. I've heard that, but I don't think it's true. I have other values besides liberty. I like music, I like chess, I like athletics. I have plenty of other values besides liberty. And he's saying that for libertarians, the only value is liberty.
I said the sole value, not the only.
The soul and only to me are synonyms. I mean, I have many other values besides liberty. But not as a libertarian. As a libertarian, I have only one value. But as a musician, I might have only one value, to play in tune or something like that. I wanted to talk about this Rawls thing. Once you read Nozick, Rawls is gone. I mean, anarchy state utopia just undermined Rawls' thing about the end state and process. What Rawls said was that we have to have some sort of end state, some sort of vague egalitarianism where the poor, anything has to help the poor. And what Nozick does is he eviscerates this with his Wilt Chamberlain example. He says, okay, well, suppose we have the end state that you want. And now all of a sudden Wilt Chamberlain says, hey, everyone, come watch me play basketball. Come watch me play basketball. I'll charge you all $20, and 100,000 people come and watch you play basketball. And then at the end of the day, everyone has less than 20, is minus 20, and he's got a couple 100,000. And now all of a sudden, the end state has been undermined by